The following program contains mature subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised.
Of course, a lot of people are abused as children. It doesn't mean that they're going to turn into serial murderers, but we do know that genetics do play a role. And so it's like the genetics load the gun, and then the environment pulls the trigger. And so what we know is that a lot of serial murderers, they do have a lower activity in certain parts of their brain called the orbital frontal cortex. And that's where we deal with feelings like rage and controlling our impulses. And so if there's not a lot of activity there and you've been abused, then that sometimes can commit
or
to
not
that.
properly nurtured as you were growing up. You didn't get love from your mom or your dad or both.
Right.
What other types of things should we consider to be? It says harming animals up there.
Yeah, harming animals is the second one. And unfortunately, every single person that was on that list, except for Ramirez, had a long history of abusing animals, even dismembering them from a young age. So for example, Dahmer killed neighbors' pets and then impaled these animals' heads on sticks and displayed them. Gacy set turkeys on fire with gasoline balloons, and Bundy mutilated both dogs and cats. And this, again, started in young childhood. We're not talking about a 15-year-old. We're talking about 4, 5, 6-year-old that this was already happening. And you know, what we see when they abuse animals from such a young age is that they're basically practicing for bigger things later.
What about intelligence as a common theme amongst serial killers?
Well, it's interesting because I think there's sort of this common idea that all serial killers are brilliant, and it's actually not true. The average serial killer has about a 95 IQ, which really what that is about 45th percentile, very average. However, in our profiles of people we're talking about here, everybody except for Ramirez was smart. And you know, in general, I think what we see is that no matter what the intelligence, there is a level of social charm. So we talk about this idea of social intelligence. They all had social intelligence, including Ramirez. At the very least, it makes you want to be close to them because they seem like lovely people who you might want to get to know.
What about the concept of intimate killings?
Yeah.
One of the most shocking things to me is when you hear someone recounting the story, a serial killer, and talking about how they dismembered their victims, and it's just hard to even envision that person in that moment. Oh,
stored them, and
is that something that's
Yeah.
a commonality?
Definitely. For a lot of serial killers, we see that they use very sort of close form ways of killing. So instead of a gunshot at, 100 feet range, right? They are getting up close and personal. They are struggling with you. They are choking you, and they're watching your face as they're choking you because they want that power and control. They want that sensation of life dying in their hands. They're playing God very literally in that way. And I think that for them, that's what ups the ante. That's what gets them going. So there's this idea that they might kill for power and control. And you don't get that kind of satisfaction if you're killing somebody at far range with a gun. And so this is definitely a commonality among all 4 of our killers. And I would say that when we look at female serial killers, because there are some too, female serial killers are kind of different. They tend to use things that are not so messy. They'll poison somebody, instead of getting up close and personal. And we definitely see this more commonly with male serial killers.
What can people look out for?
Okay, so for parents especially, I definitely want to give hope out there because you can re-educate your child. I mean, there's very, very few rare cases where this person is basically kind of what I would say born evil, where it looks like no matter what, no matter how much love you give them, validation, doesn't matter, they just have these tendencies. But generally, if the environment is set up right, if they have warmth and love and good education, they can change and become productive citizens of society. So unfortunately, a lot of these serial killers grew up in homes where criminality was rewarded in one way or another. So you have to be that parent that gives them the opposite message. When they are in school age years, then this is really about rewards and consequences. Kids at this age are very selfish. They're all about what's in it for me. And that's okay. It's too soon to have those complex morality discussions with them, but do tell them that these are the rules, and if you don't follow them, then you're gonna get something taken away, and they do respond to that. And finally, in teenage years, this is when you get to really talk to them about complex morality. Make sure that you're exposing them to volunteer opportunities, talking to them about people who are less fortunate, telling them to put themselves in other people's shoes, really being able to have those complex conversations that sometimes there's not a right or wrong answer, but try to do the right thing. And as a teenager, their brains can comprehend that and involve themselves in that conversation with you.
Good stuff. Appreciate it.